To start off, tell us about yourself. Give us your name, age, and occupation.
My name is Carson Garrett. I am 20 years old and I am an aerospace engineering student at Georgia Tech.
Why are you here on Survivor?
I am here on Survivor to fulfill a lifelong goal of beating this game. I'm here to be the sole Survivor winner. I really value the title. I have just been obsessed with this game ever since I started watching. This game means so much to me because it involves so many different elements of the real world and also applies it in some sort of game, theory mechanism that is so entertaining to watch. It's funny, it's interesting, it's like captivating, and so I think for me, it's just something that I've always wanted to do. I never thought I would be at this point because I remember when I started watching the show, I was like, I was like, I don't think Jeff will still be doing it when I'm old enough. And so now that I'm here, I'm just so thrilled that I'm going to be living my dream come true. And I think that that will prepare me to win the game.
What's your history with watching Survivor?
I started watching Survivor 6 years ago. My cousins and my aunt were like, "You have to watch this show." And at the time, I really wasn't into watching TV, and so I started watching the second episode of Millennials versus Gen X with them, and almost instantly when they were in Fiji and just it was like a real life game with real people, I was just hooked. I mean, couldn't stop watching. I loved the end of the season. And over time, I've kind of gradually become more and more of a super fan to the point that now I feel like I'm an uber duper super fan, like the highest point you can get in terms of Survivor fandom.
Give me one Survivor winner and one non-winner who you identify with the most.
I think the winner that I identify with most would have to be Cochrane. Um, he is someone that was naturally out of his element, but he was able to use his quirkiness and his nerdiness as some sort of weapon, and people didn't really recognize that he was such a threat because he kind of downplayed his strategy and focused more on just kind of maneuvering the game, being kind of the behind the scenes. And I really respected the way that he was able to get to the end, present his case so well to the jury, and ultimately secure the $1 million. The player I probably identify most that didn't win the game, I have several, but I would say most recently it would probably be Omer from season 42. He was very receptive of his threat level and he really tried to manage it throughout the game. And so he didn't focus on trying to say, "Hey guys, look, I made this big move." No, he sat through the game and made sure that he was still involved with every single vote and almost kind of moving the puzzle pieces as he saw fit. But he didn't need the ego boost to say, "Hey, that was me running the game." In fact, he did the opposite. He said he was very comfortable being the person that everyone thought was not running the show. And I think that's how I want to play the game, is really building social bonds with people and in behind the scenes really working people strategically to best position myself to win the game.
What's your favorite moment in Survivor history?
My favorite moment from the history of Survivor is definitely when Sandra ate all of the sugar and game changers and made a big chaotic moment between JT and Michaela. It was one of my favorite moments because Sandra recognized in the moment that JT was getting annoyed with Michaela for wanting a bunch of scoops of sugar and a drip of coffee, and to him that was wasting it. And so Sandra, seeing what's going on, like played on that. She caused more chaos than there was, and actually caused more of a rift between them. And ultimately, when they went to tribal, it was between Michaela and JT. And in effect, she took the target off of her and put the bullseye between those two. They were going at it, and she just sat in the background and laughed. So that was probably one of my favorite moments.
What's one life experience you feel has prepared you most for the game?
I would say the life experience that has prepared me most for this game would probably be my project management track over my 2 years in college. I started out in college not really knowing where I wanted to go. I applied for astrophysics, switched majors to chemical engineering, and then ended up in aerospace engineering. And throughout that process, I really didn't know what I wanted to get involved with, what I was interested in. So I joined a consulting organization, which just was working on developing strategies for nonprofit organizations, minority owned. And I found a lot of meaning in it. And eventually I worked my way up to being a project leader my first year. I was working on huge projects with clients that were way older than me. And I was a first year leading teams with MBA students. And so I had to kind of be able to take myself back and say, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm going to work with you, and I'm not going to be in some sort of like, there's not going to be a hierarchy on the team. I am here to kind of just position ourselves and get us to the point that we're supposed to help our client, and not really focus on trying to be in charge in a sense. And so I've continued to work my way up through the organization, and it's kind of very off track from what a typical engineer would be involved in. But I just love working with people, collaborating, and being a good listener, and not necessarily someone who's talking down to people. And so I think in Survivor, it's really going to help me, because I can use those similar strategies to work with people and not over them. And so, especially with my age and being younger than people, as long as I show them that I'm more interested in learning about them than I am in them listening about my stories, then I think it will work well for me.
What excites you the most about the new era of Survivor?
The thing that excites me the most about being on Survivor is potentially being able to like be put in a position where I've never seen this advantage before. I had no inkling of what's going to happen, and I don't know what anyone else knows. And being able to like make that split second decision of what I want to do in the moment with only knowing a limited amount of information. I think from a viewer's point of view, you know everything that's happening. You see all of those small alliances, and you see what people have said about each other. But what excites me as a super fan is being in a position where I have to assess the best decision for me based off of the information I know. And a lot of times that will be lies, that will be things that are not true. And so I can't wait to try to be able to maneuver through the game, knowing a limited amount of information and making the best decisions on advantages and how I want to vote based off of that limited information, seeing what it's really like in the moment. And I think it will ultimately give me a lot more respect to the players that are able to, do so well in this game, because regardless of whether you're actually playing or you're just watching from afar, it's a hard game, and you can visually see that.
What do you think people will perceive you as?
I think people will perceive me as someone who's really friendly and nice and just here for the experience. They probably will kind of view me as a super fan, given my age and the typical archetype that I might be in, and that I wear glasses. But in most of my life, people initially perceive me as just really nice, kind of to myself. And really interested in them. And like in high school, I won, or I was voted the friendliest for senior superlatives. And I think in general, just from what people tell me, they're always like, oh my gosh, I just see you as this such a nice person. And then I get to know you and you're much more like devious and strategic and you're ambitious and you're competitive. And so I want to play on to that. I want whatever people perceive me as, whether it's inexperienced because of my age or nice and young, whatever that may be. And I'll kind of assess that as I go throughout the game. I want to play into that. And I want people to continue to view me in a less threatening light. And if that means that I'm viewed as inexperienced and young, that's fine. I will go for that all day. That's great. And I think for me, as I go throughout the game, I might show more elements of the strategy behind my game. But again, I want to stay as behind the scenes as possible.
What type of player are you looking for in an alliance?
The type of player I'm looking for in an alliance is someone who is kind of just there for the ride and is very loyal. I'm not necessarily a loyal player. I'm honestly always going to make the most optimal move to get me further in this game. But people that don't play like that and are playing more of an emotional, like less strategic game, those are great people to work with. Why? Because they're very predictable. If you present something to them as, hey, you told me this, you've got to be loyal to me, whatever it may be, and you play up to the loyalty or whatever they perceive as important, as long as it's kind of short-sighted, I think that those are people that I can predict what they're going to do, so I can better assess how I need to tell them something about myself or what I'm planning to vote, and almost in a sense, manipulate them so that they can be almost one of my numbers, like chess pieces that I can move around however I need. The more strategic people like myself, I want to get out as soon as possible.
How eager will you be to look for advantages in the game?
I won't be eager to look for advantages at the beginning of the game. In fact, I will kind of try to avoid it. I think at the beginning of the game, people can become very antsy and they can go off from the tribe and, like we saw with Tori, look for an idol as on day one. And I think that that is a really bad thing to do, especially at the beginning of the game where those first impressions are so important. And so really at the beginning of the game, I'll just kind of be focusing on being in the majority of the group at all times, never really leaving the camp and building the shelter, and never even looking like I'm looking for an idol. Now, when I get further into the game, probably like merge or right up to the merge, that's when I'll start probably leaving in the middle of the night, going looking for idols, and still making it very unknown that I'm doing that in the process. I think we saw with Tony, he looked for a bunch of idols in season 34 Game Changers right at the beginning, immediately got voted out, and Tori had such a bad first impression from looking for an idol last season on season 42 that we've just seen so many instances where it doesn't work out for people. And then you see with Tony, he comes back and he waits and he waits. And even though it's against his very nature, he finally waits to like the middle part of the game. And then he goes crazy and looks for an idol. But I'll probably mimic that in a sense.
What's the one thing you told yourself you wouldn't do in this game?
In this game, I won't. I told myself I wouldn't try to be revengeful and be mean to people for the sole purpose of being mean. I think that sometimes people get upset with each other, and yes, it's a game, but I think that it's important to realize that these are real people, and I don't want people to be upset with me post game because of something that I did that was unnecessary. So even though I will be playing a cutthroat game, I won't be making moves just for the sole purpose of hurting someone.
What's the best advice you received before coming out to play?
The best advice I received before coming out to play was kind of from a lot of my family members, and that it was just to be myself and have fun. And I think that that really kind of put the focus of how I wanted to play the game into the light, because I wasn't really sure like what type of game I specifically wanted to play, whether I wanted to be the villain or like try to be the hero. And I think for me, it just came down to I want to be myself, I want to have fun, and I want to play this game as best as possible. And I want to win, and my sole purpose of being here is to win. But I also want to have fun in the process. And if like that means that I can cause a little bit of chaos and it not affect my game, but in fact affect my game in a positive light, then I'm totally going to take that option. I want to be able to watch the show back and be like, I had fun out there. This was a great experience.
Can you come up with your own weird phrase that could be said at a challenge to unlock an idol?
Ooh, this is such a question. I don't know. um, okay, I have it. For me, Jeff, I think that some of the smartest people in the world are really challenging the perceptions that we all might have are flat earthers because they know everything about the earth and they've studied it and they want to try to figure out more than just what we're told. I don't know, that was bad. Something about flat earthers I would love to incorporate. I think that would be funny because it's absolutely ludicrous.
What celebrity or fictional character would you want to come out for a loved one's visit?
I don't know. Okay, yeah. I think the celebrity I would love to come out for a loved one's visit is, in my mind, a celebrity, Sandra Diaz Twine. I absolutely adore her. I think she's funny. I think she would make me laugh and also actually provide me some great strategic advice. So I'd love to meet Sandra the Queen. She is amazing.